Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel, Life After Loss. My name is Lindsay, and if this is your first time joining me, welcome. I invite you to check out my introduction video so that you can get a sense of the things that we talk about here on my channel. But in summary, we talk about grief and the grief experience and how we can honor it one emotion at a time. For my 100 subscribers, thank you so much for continuing to support me through this journey, and welcome back. So I'm going to jump right in. So today we are going to be discussing grieving as a caregiver. This has been a topic that I had been reflecting for quite some time. And as I mentioned to you guys, the grief experience is something that you're continuously learning from, not necessarily about anything outside of you, but it's mostly learning about yourself and kind of what causes you to react or feel or experience things in a certain way, as well as the intensity of it, right? Because as we've said time and time again, there is no right way or wrong way to grieve. There's simply your way. And there are so many factors that can impact your grief experience. And we have mentioned just a few of those in previous videos. But today we are going to focus on our role as a caregiver. So I know that when we hear the word caregiver, perhaps we think about paid professionals that take care of those that are sick. Perhaps we can even think about parents that take care of their children. But in essence, many of us are caregivers and we don't even realize it. I know this was something that I recently learned after working in a social adult day program, that I myself have been a caregiver since I was a kid to my mother, right? So caregiving, it's in the word. So it's pretty much anytime you give care to a person for whatever reasons, whether it be because of a physical, a mental health ailment, this is your child, or there's a reason why you need to provide a continuous level of care for this individual, whoever it may be. So when I was thinking about my role and my grief experience and how it aligned as far as the way my grief experience has manifested, I thought about several things. And I actually jotted down, again, a few notes for me just because I want to make sure that I hit all the points, and I want to make sure to also minimize my time because I know you guys are busy. So we want to get straight to the point. So in my previous videos, we talked about, like I said, the loss of identity. So some of the secondary losses that we experience can be the loss of finances, the loss of identity, stability, the loss of a lot of things that, again, we're not conscious or aware of until we actually face, like, wow, this person is no longer here for this particular area or part of my life. So when I spoke about the loss of identity, I also mentioned the loss of our assigned roles, because when we come into this world, we have assigned roles, whether it's daughter, son, whether it's spouse, whether it's parent. We as human beings have many roles that perhaps we're not even aware of, but sometimes what tends to happen is we become so ingrained and so enmeshed in these roles that we think that we are these roles. Rather than the role being a part of our lives, we think that our role as a caregiver, our role as whoever, is who we are. And in essence, we tend to lose ourselves, lose sight of actually what matters to us, what's important to us, what we want, what our happiness is, what our joy is, and what are some of the things that perhaps even upset us because we're so ingrained in, no, this is who I am as a person, this role and only this role. And you tend to see that a lot with caregivers, particularly my experience of how when my mom passed away, I lost a lot of things. So at that moment, I lost my identity as a person, because now that this person who I took care of for so many years along with my brothers was no longer here, I was like, okay, so what's my purpose? So then I segued to the loss of purpose. I felt like I had this immense void that no matter how much I tried, no matter what I did, I could no longer fill. I lost my sense of self-worth, and now my self-worth had been lost so long before I was actually aware of it, right? Because again, I became so ingrained, so enmeshed in caring for my mom and making sure that she was okay and making sure that, you know, I minimized any things that may upset her. I just tried to control the environment as much as humanly possible. In investing so much of my energy, time, focus, and dedication to her, I, in essence, lost myself. Not to say that I wasn't wanting to take care of my mom, because that was a conscious choice that I made. I didn't know how to balance it, because in my culture, so I'm Dominican American, in my culture, it is very much the case for women to be viewed as caregivers. We're the people that are supposed to be taking care of the family. We're the people that are supposed to be, you know, making sure that things are kept together, things are kept in order. The women are the ones to the rescue, right? And this is something that I really have struggled to break out of, just because being assigned that role, assigning that role to myself based on my belief system and based on cultural views, led me to depleting myself at a relatively fast pace. And that is something that as a caregiver, you think that you can't say out loud. You think that, you know, again, you were born to take care of people. You were born for these particular reasons, where we were born to simply be. We weren't born to do anything that we ourselves haven't taken on. When my mom passed away 10 years ago, I remember just feeling as though I wasn't sure where my place belonged in the world. And there was a lot of times where I was just like, okay, like, perhaps I should have gone with her. I'm supposed to die as well. My mom is no longer here. My purpose was to take care of her. So now that my purpose is gone, why am I still on this earth? And this was a question that I asked many, many times, and I asked for several years, just because, again, I didn't understand, in essence, my grief experience from the lens of what, you know, different factors were actually affecting me. We, in essence, become the shadow of our loved ones. And it's interesting because even the way society views, let's say, the term selfish and selfless, we learn that being selfless is good. Being the daughter that takes care of their parents is good. Even the simple categorization of good and bad, it's like, what is good and bad? According to who? According to what standard? And who created this standard, right? Because if anything in life was created at your expense, meaning that you shouldn't take care of yourself, that you shouldn't think about yourself, that you shouldn't complain, that you shouldn't live your experience, because at the end of the day, you're the one living your life. You are the one walking in your shoes. It's very interesting and highly improbable that we were placed on this earth just to do for the other. Because if when we're too busy doing for the other and that other person is no longer here, because I don't know, that's part of the human experience. We're all going to come and go, right? So when that other person is no longer here, then how do you take care of yourself? Like what then becomes your purpose? Then you look for someone else to take care of? No, because at the end of the day, it's just a rat race that you're simply never going to win. And again, it's how we perceive and conceptualize these terms, selfish and selfless. We learn that selfish is negative. We learn that selfless is love. Life is about a balance, right? In order for there to be light, there has to be darkness. In order for there to be right, there has to be wrong. In order for there to be love, there has to be hate. So it's, again, if these dualities of things didn't exist, then nothing would exist. Right? So in order for you to be selfless, you first have to be selfish, because again, it's bringing it back to basics and bringing it back to the analogy of the car. The car will only take you as far as the gas will permit, right? Once it's out of gas, you're done until you fill it up again. We will go and go and be able to keep going as long as you continue to fill your own tank. And it's interesting because to this day, as I'm talking to you guys, I'm still trying to figure out how to fill that tank, right? We tend to justify how you fill your own tank by saying, oh yeah, just self-care, go to the spa, go shopping, do something nice for yourself, where we think that self-care and self-love are the same thing, and they're not. They're two separate categories, because I'm the queen of self-care. There is not a human being in this planet, I think, that takes more care of herself than this baby girl right here. And I say that because it's the truth. I go shopping for myself. I do the massages, I do the manicures, I do the pedicures, I do the meditation. I do these things that physically are able to take care of myself. But loving yourself is a different thing, where I've come to the conclusion, and again, you can have your opinion and tell me what you think in the comments below. Self-love is deeper than that. Self-love are the daily decisions that we take for granted. For instance, how do we put ourselves first and our desires and needs first? It can be as simple as when a friend is saying, hey, so what are we gonna do? What do you want to eat? And your response may be, I don't know, whatever you want. That would have been a perfect example of when to show self-love, because perhaps you did know what you want. Perhaps you were craving something in particular. So it's like putting yourself first, saying, okay, I want a burger today, you know, and it's being able to make that decision and feel okay that, okay, this is what I want. Now let me talk about it with you, where it's like, again, we learn to pretty much direct our attention to the other person. It's like, what do you want? What are you craving? What do you need? And putting yourself in the back burner. So I digress. Let me bring it back around. Going back to the whole experience of grieving as a caregiver, I've seen, and my clients pretty much are caregivers of people with dementia, people that have had cancer, so these chronic illnesses. One thing in common that I've seen in most, if not all, of my caregivers that I've worked with is that they just do and do and do and burn themselves out to the bone, where their loved ones becomes their existence, their loved ones become them, and you're no longer looking at two people, you're looking at one person, where it's just the loved one, right? So it's like, how do we take care and how do we make sure this person is right? And what ends up happening eventually, if not now, but later down the line, is that you end up again depleting yourself to the point of no return, to the point of feeling like no matter what you do, no matter what you think, no matter what you say, you feel this fatigue. And it's not just physical fatigue, it's emotional fatigue, it's spiritual fatigue, it's overall fatigue of just feeling like you have literally stretched yourself as thin as possible and there's nothing more that you can do, and you can become resentful, you can even become physically ill. I share these things with you guys because it wasn't until I realized that this was something that was impacting my grief experience that I was able to have a more rounded perception of what I was experiencing, of how I was feeling, of how I was viewing myself, right? So my message is this: giving to yourself is not a bad thing. Putting yourself first is not a bad thing. Being selfish is not a bad thing. Let's stop looking at life and the experiences and the decisions we make as good and bad. We simply have to do what's best for ourselves. And guess who knows what's best for ourselves? Ourselves, right? Because don't let it be the case that you become or aim to become so selfless that you in essence lose the self and just end up being less. There is no way that I can show up 100% for anyone if I myself can't show up for myself. Does that make sense? So I invite you guys, I encourage you guys to reflect upon this. What are some of your assigned roles that you feel like you've either been assigned, you've either taken on, and how do you create balance? Because in life, it's all about balance. It may seem like you have no time for yourself or you have no space for yourself, but you need to make that, even if it's 5 minutes in the day, whatever time that is. What can you give to yourself? How can you give to yourself? How can you put gasoline in that tank? So I hope you guys have found this message helpful. I hope this has resonated with you. Let me know what some of your reflections are. Are you a caregiver? Let me know how that experience is going in the comments below. So please make sure to subscribe to my channel, Life After Loss. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at _lifeafterloss. If you have any questions, inquiries, or would like to be a guest on my video, please email me at lifeafterloss0322@gmail.com. I thank you guys once again for tuning in, and remember that there is no right or wrong way to experience your grief. There is only your way. Until the next.